program is about therapeutic communication. After completing this lesson, you will be able to describe 2 techniques of effective communication. Identify one roadblock to effective communication. Describe the role of nonverbal communication and body language in care delivery. State one example of an open-ended question, and describe 2 principles of empathy.
People Who Need People is not just a song. It is a universal reality. All that lives communicates. Life depends on communication. The very definition demands a relationship with others. Communication is the giving and receiving of messages. The need to exchange ideas, feelings, knowledge, problems, and dreams demands that we develop a relationship with others. Interpersonal communication is humanity's greatest accomplishment. Or, as the German philosopher Karl Jaspers put it, man's supreme achievement in the world is communication from personality to personality. Then why are so few people able to communicate well? Why is our supreme achievement the source of most, if not all, of our problems? Between nations, between and within governments, in business and industry, where we work and play, in our homes between family members, disharmony and dysfunction can be traced to a lack of effective communication.
Whenever you express yourself, your words are very muddled. Your messages are scrambled. They leave me quite befuddled. Now when I speak, each word and phrase is clear as it can be. That's why I just can't figure out why no one understands me.
Excuse me, it seems my message was unclear. Let me start over. Whenever you express yourself, your words are very muddled. Your messages are scrambled. They leave me quite befuddled. Now when I speak, each word and phrase is clear as it can be. That's why I just can't figure out why no one understands me. A breakdown in communication is the major cause of tension and discord between people, and studies support the point of this bit of humor. When there is a breakdown in communication, we all believe the other person is at fault. 80% of the people who fail at work do so for one reason. They do not relate well to other people. Yet they believe they failed because of the other guy. As we relate to people in a positive way, we show who we are as a person. The quality of our relationships with others, and ultimately the quality of our life, is directly influenced by how well or how poorly we communicate. Words can separate people, or can bring them together. The better we communicate, the better we will understand and get along with others, and they with us. The effective communication techniques and skills we use in our personal life will enhance rapport with our patients, their families, our supervisors, and other co-workers as we establish trust, learn about the people we're caring for, work through problems, explain care and treatment, teach, listen, report, and record. Communication is the giving and receiving of messages. The primary role of communication is to nurture fulfilling and productive relationships. We depend on communication with others for our basic human needs: love, recognition, acceptance, a sense of belonging, socialization, security, and our feelings of self-worth. Deficient communication can affect our mental, physical, and emotional health. As healthcare providers, we are concerned with yet another level of communication, which we will call therapeutic communication. This is the communication with our patients, communication that must be caring, helping, and healing. Therapeutic communication involves the basic communication techniques we use in our everyday lives, along with the special communication skills we apply to our patients during care delivery. In this program, we will build a highway which will lead to harmony and understanding. The basic communication techniques are the road signs that direct us. Stay alert. There are many roadblocks along the way, both on and off the job. I will not just point them out. Together we will explore ways to remove these roadblocks. We will go the extra mile by looking at the special skills you will need to achieve therapeutic communication with your patients, their families, and others. I will be your guide as we travel together down the highway of therapeutic communication. I will point out important road signs and landmarks. Familiar landscapes will take on new meaning, as you view them through the eyes of knowledge and awareness. When we reach our destination, you too will be an experienced traveler, with the skills and knowledge to communicate effectively in your personal life and with your patients. These good communication skills will yield better cooperation. If you explain the reason so that people understand, they are more apt to oblige a request. Improved attitudes. Mutual respect and caring will replace the slanted or biased views we have of others, helping to eliminate negative words and actions. Free expressions of feelings and needs, a very healthy habit. And because we communicate better, we will experience reduced hostility. Mental, emotional, or physical violence often result from closed minds. Less stress. Worry occurs needlessly when people have not been told what to expect. Fewer physical problems. Headaches, ulcers, insomnia, and nervous breakdowns may be brought on by prolonged anxiety. Whether we touch, talk, write, read, hear, smell, visualize, or draw pictures, communication allows us to share and record feelings and ideas, attitudes and concerns, hopes and dreams. Whatever the mode, communication is simply the sending and receiving of messages. A simple model will illustrate this definition. The model shows the process that occurs when people share ideas. Communication involves a sender, the person who originates the message. This could also be a group, but we will use two people in our model. The receiver is the person to whom the message is sent. The message is actually a composite of significant information, ideas, feelings, and mental images that the sender must put into symbols, usually words, which the receiver will understand. This process is called encoding. This is not an easy task, but it is critical if people are to interpret your message correctly. It goes on each time we communicate. A message travels through channels. The channel could be a fax machine, a phone call, a conversation, or the 50 yards between a quarterback and a receiver. When the message reaches the receiver, much the same process called decoding occurs as the ideas, feelings, and mental images are reconstructed in the mind of the receiver. If the sender arranges the information into a precise message, if the channel is clear and suitable, and if the receiver interprets the message correctly, then the messages on both ends should match, and there is understanding. Let's put the model to the test. The sender wants to communicate information to the receiver, so he encodes a message, which he hopes the receiver will understand.
I'm holding a blue balloon.
The receiver gets the message and decodes it into symbols she understands. Another important part of the model is feedback, the response from the receiver. Feedback is essential as confirmation of the message, as well as a way to begin the process of problem solving and decision making.
That is a very pretty balloon.
Through this feedback, the receiver then becomes the sender, and the cycle of communication continues. You can see that if this communication is to be effective, the transfer of ideas and information depends on whether the message that is received is exactly what the sender intended. Here is another example.
I'm eating a delicious piece of fruit.
The receiver, with very few clues, decodes the message based on the type of fruit she thinks is delicious.
Yes, pears are great this time of year.
So the communication model is not as simple as it seems. Besides the difficulties involved in conveying a clear message that will be understood, we must deal with the channels the message goes through and the world of possible interference. Environment distractions, noise, timing, anxiety, failure to listen. Remember the difficulties you had hearing through 2 tin cans. You cannot talk on a phone that is crackling with static. You cannot understand a videotape that is scrambled. Someone who is illiterate will not be able to follow an instruction sheet, no matter how clearly or simply it is written. Do you remember when you were a young child playing the game Pass It On? A secret was whispered into the ear of the first child. Then each child in turn whispered it to the next person. The last child received the message and announced it aloud, always drawing hysterical laughter. Teacher will give us a test in spelling this afternoon. Might end up, teacher smells just like a loon. So what happened? Obviously, the children presented, perhaps in part intentionally, an obstacle course that prevented the message from being delivered as sent. Perhaps someone whispered too fast or spoke too softly. The misinformation really doesn't matter much. It was a harmless childhood game, fun to play. But what if the message that got scrambled went to the person whose finger will push the button, sending nuclear weapons against an enemy? Not at all an impossibility. What if the message that directed care of a brittle diabetic patient was unclear, and your patient took an insulin injection for hypoglycemia when concentrated sugar was called for? To communicate so that your intended audience receives a clear and correct message is extremely important, whatever your task or level of interaction. Good communication techniques are essential to life. In the healthcare field, we have critical responsibilities that demand precise communication. Researchers who studied language and people interacting with each other have identified basic communication techniques that work most efficiently. These basic techniques needed for successful communication just happen to be the road signs on our highway of effective communications. Create a quiet, relaxed, comfortable atmosphere to promote interaction.
I'm going to leave for a few hours to take Grandpa to the doctor. I'm expecting a call from the insurance agent. Tell him to call back tomorrow.
Good communication demands interest and attention, and that takes an environment that is conducive to communication. Air hammers just outside the window can be quite disruptive, but it is just as difficult to communicate with someone who is scanning a magazine, watching television, or shouting from another room. Show the other person you are interested in what they are saying by facing them. Try to eliminate distractions. Lean in, relax, smile. Attend to what they are saying.
I'm going to leave for a few hours to take Grandpa to the doctor. I'm expecting an important call from the insurance agent. Tell him to call back tomorrow.
Okay, I'll give him the message.
Know and respect your audience. If you knew that your audience did not understand Spanish, you would not try to convey a message in that language. So it is in life. We not only speak, but we respond from our background, education, and life experience. It is estimated that a high school graduate has a speaking vocabulary of 3,000 to 5,000 words. Some people know only a few hundred words, few of them with more than 3 syllables. This does not reveal ignorance, but more likely a lack of education. Assess your patient and incorporate that knowledge into your interaction. Culture comes into play in understanding your audience. To say Italians tend to be more demonstrative is not a biased generality, but a meaningful observation that may dictate the way you interact with certain patients. Put more emphasis on body language, a pat on the back or a hug. An Englishman might prefer to remain aloof, putting distance between himself and others. A handshake might be best for him. And once you know your audience, you must respect them. Respect is appreciating that person simply because he is a human being. You acknowledge that your patient and his feelings are unique and precious. You accept their differences, acknowledge that they too have resources and capabilities, and move on from there. Keep your message simple and brief.
What was that loud noise?
Oh, that was a shockwave, a strong pressure disturbance generated by a supersonic aerodynamic aircraft traveling at the level of the cumulonimbus clouds.
Or in simple and brief terms, that was a sonic boom. Good communication demands simplicity and brevity. Don't use 2 words if one will do, but make it a word that carries the exact shade of meaning. Speak slowly and distinctly, and use short words and short sentences. We get the job done quickly and efficiently if directions are clear. In the medical profession, this road sign means avoid using jargon.
Why do I have to drink so much water?
Because you're taking sulfasalazine for your UTI. You need to force fluids to prevent crystalluria. You also need to avoid ultraviolet light to prevent photosensitivity, and we wouldn't want you to develop urticaria.
Medical terminology may sound impressive, but it's worthless if the person you're talking to doesn't know the meaning of the words. Your patients may feel stupid, thinking they should know what you're talking about, and might even be reluctant to ask questions. Misunderstanding is more likely. Be simple and brief.
Why must I drink so much water?
You have to drink a lot of water because you're on a sulfa medication for your bladder infection, and the water helps you to avoid any problems. And you should try to stay out of the sun to avoid a rash.
The sender and receiver must agree on meanings.
I'm really cool.
I'm really cool.
People make meanings for words, and different people attach different meanings based on their personal knowledge and background. There are dozens of metaphors for death.
He's passed away.
He expired.
He's gone to heaven.
He kicked the bucket.
Not only does Webster have a word for everything, but a variety of meanings for each word. Mutual understanding of a particular meaning is necessary for clear messages. To be sure you and the receiver are speaking in the same terms, be more specific. Your assignment requires that you document if a patient had a bowel movement today.
Did you use the bathroom today?
Yes.
This question is not specific enough to obtain the information you need. The patient may have simply combed her hair. Be sure to clarify and validate by asking specific questions.
Did you have a bowel movement today?
No, I'm having some problems.
Make sure you understand and are understood.
Do you have any questions about the care of the dog while I'm gone?
Feedback is a helpful means of checking information received. Without it, it is hard to tell if meanings are clearly understood. Give and ask for feedback often. Ask questions for clarification and seek verification of your response from the listener. Give the other person a chance to reply and listen carefully.
The nurse says you have a staph infection.
If a patient hears she has a staph infection, meaning that it is an infection caused by a Staphylococcus organism, she may think you are referring to her staff of caregivers and mistakenly think they are the source of her infection. Be sure that you use words that the patient can understand and ask for feedback often. In healthcare, you will need to master open-ended questions. Open-ended questions are those that cannot be answered with a simple yes or no.
Did you have breakfast today?
The patient can say yes or no, and that is the end of the discussion. You lose the chance to get information which could be vital to care delivery. Try an open-ended question.
How was your appetite for breakfast today?
I didn't have much of an appetite. The food looked very inviting, but I'm just not hungry.
Open-ended questions allow patients to express themselves more fully and helps you to provide care to meet their needs. Be honest, tactful, and sincere.
It's only a little stick. It won't hurt.
We shouldn't knowingly deceive or play games with our patients. Many patients are chronically ill with permanent disabilities and problems. Fears weigh heavily on their minds, often worsening symptoms by causing worry and emotional distress. They will turn to you for the answers they need or want to hear.
How will I manage when I run out of money and can't pay for my care anymore?
Some questions you will not be able to answer because you don't have the necessary information.
I don't know much about your finances, but we can call your case manager and she'll explain your options to you.
My daughter-in-law doesn't take good care of my grandchildren. Their clothes are always dirty. She never cooks for them. Shall I tell my son? Or what should I do?
Some questions would not be your business to answer.
I really don't know enough about that situation to be able to help you.
And some questions have no answers.
When am I going to die?
It always helps to have someone who will listen with sincere concern. If you feel a response is necessary, rephrase the patient's concern.
I don't know the answer to that question. Nobody does. But you appear concerned about it.
Maintain control of emotions and faculties.
First you say you can't wait till dinner and you have to have a snack. So I make a snack and then you say you're not really hungry. Well, here's your snack. Eat it.
Treat everyone with respect and try to get along. We may not agree with their views, but should try to understand where they are coming from. To walk a mile in their shoes. Sort fact from opinion and use calm, rational problem solving. Never argue, lose your temper, criticize, insist you are right, or assume an I told you so attitude. It only makes the situation worse. The other person may become defensive and angry, or perhaps quiet and withdrawn, refusing to discuss the problem. Don't judge or lay blame. If your patient is rude, try to find out the reason. Your manner should be accepting and non-judgmental. Visitors and family members need patience and understanding. Try not to get involved in family affairs or take sides. Sometimes, when you know your patient, it helps to lighten up. Humor is a most effective means of communication, often working where other methods fail. While trying to prepare her coffee, your patient spills the milk for the third time.
Oh no, not again. I believe you're trying to set a record, aren't you? Well, maybe next time I'll have to help you.
The aide strives to keep a light mood while trying to solve the problem without embarrassing or hurting the patient. Be patient and polite.
Oh, this chocolate ice cream really looks good, and I want to thank you, but I really can't eat it
Because you're on a low-fat diet, yes, I know.
No, it's because, you see, I can't...
Well, you'll be happy to know that this is fat-free yogurt.
No, it's because of the chocolate.
Chocolate has fat too, but this doesn't. It is chocolate flavoring, so you can just eat it and enjoy it.
What I'm really trying to tell you is I'm allergic to chocolate.
Oh.
Consider the words and ideas of others important. Let them express their thoughts fully. Don't interrupt, change the subject, anticipate their words, or hurry things along by saying, I know what you're thinking, and then speak for them or answer questions they haven't had the opportunity to ask. Finally, one of the most important communication techniques of all, listening. Good listening is the ultimate professional responsibility.
You can't talk and listen at the same time, so stop talking. We have 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. We should listen twice as much as we talk.
In our busy, noisy society, we are accustomed to half listening, to the radio or television, to street noises, to children, and to others. With our thoughts and hands busy elsewhere, we are all guilty of not giving our full attention when someone else is talking to us. More often, it is a matter of preoccupation with our own thoughts that keeps us from concentrating on the speaker's remarks. Listening can be passive, without feedback, except perhaps nonverbals, yawns as we watch television or listen to a lecture. Or it can be active listening, a special form that is used when exact understanding is vital. Pay attention to the voice, words, and nonverbals in active listening. Restate in your own words the message you thought the speaker has just sent, without adding anything new. We engage in active listening every time we confirm directions.
Let me make sure I have this right. I go down the street 2 blocks, make a left, and the theater should be right there. That's right.
Sometimes, active listeners can detect a patient's worry that longs to be acknowledged.
I'm alone all the time.
Without active listening, you might be tempted to challenge the patient's statement because she is seldom alone.
How can you say that you always have friends and neighbors visiting you?
Yes, I guess you're right.
But through active listening, you listen for feelings behind the statement. Restate the message without adding anything new.
I'm alone all the time.
You feel like you're alone?
Yes. I know I have lots of visitors, but my son never comes to see me.
You're lonesome for your son?
Yes, that's it. It's not that I'm alone. It's just that I miss my son.
Active listening allows verbal feedback and therefore increases the understanding of both the sender and the receiver, often cutting through layers of hidden meaning. It offers the opportunity to ask questions. It encourages others to share and, in the process, helps them work out problems for themselves. Between active and passive listening, there is a range of attentiveness you can give to the messages of others. As a caregiver, communication with your patients and their families, though friendly and conversational, must reflect the professional nature of your relationship. Remember, listening is a skill. To listen is to be still, to expect, to wait for a response, to practice restraint. Now you should be able to answer a few questions. What are 3 benefits of effective communication? What are the 4 components in the communication model? What is active listening? What is an open-ended question? What are 4 techniques of effective communication? Using your personal experience, can you give an example of each? Just like the scenery and terrain affects your travels along a country road, there are other factors, which we will call landmarks, which impact communication with our patients. These landmarks include role, voice, and nonverbal language. Just like the weather determines the choice of our apparel, different types of communication require different approaches. Our role in communications is important. We must be sensitive to individual situations and be able to adjust. Urgency, formality, preciseness, technicality, familiarity, and other circumstances shape both our message and the way we deliver it. Casual conversations with friends are comfortable and fun for all of us. We tend to tolerate many things from our friends: opinions, judgments, interruptions. But caring for a patient is not the same as a friendship. You do not have to like your patient to be an effective caregiver. Communication, then, must be precise. We must pay closer attention and use effective communication skills. We are judged less on what we say than on how we say it and how we present ourselves. Another person's impression of us is based 55% on appearance, 38% on voice, and only 7% on the actual words we speak. How we fulfill our role is also based on the perceptions of others. If we are to be perceived as helpful, we should look the role. A neat, clean, professional appearance is essential. Follow the dress code of your organization. Don't chew gum or crack your knuckles. If the first impressions are negative, we may not get a second chance to present a positive, accurate presentation that reveals who we really are inside. And that perception also goes the other way. How do you perceive the patient? If you perceive the patient as helpless or nagging, that patient will probably live up to that role. Remember, every person is unique and individual, with talents and special skills. Keep an open mind. Get to know your patient. The volume, tone, and pitch of our voice is a great indicator of the spirit of the message. Loud voices can sound harsh, grating, and cause anger in the listener.
Would you please return the book you borrowed?
Means when you get around to it.
Would you please return the book that you borrowed?
Means you are careless and inconsiderate to keep it so long. Return it at once. If we speak too softly, we are hard to understand. The tone should be pleasant, especially if the person you are addressing is upset. And sometimes the tone, volume, and distance is as important as the words.
Oh, I'm really sorry that your cat died.
The words really do not mean much when they are said from a distance as you leave the room. Sometimes a soft, tender tone of voice as you sit down next to your patient is much more sincere. Most often we think of communication in terms of words and language, written and spoken. However, studies show that nonverbal communication is a better indicator of what we really mean. Nonverbal communication, or body language, is the greater expression of feelings through facial expressions, gestures, and postural positions. It adds color and interest to communication. We have all seen demonstrations of body language before. Nonverbal communication can confirm and strengthen, or it can deny and confuse. Look at the powerful message conveyed through these nonverbal expressions. A young man sees a pretty girl. A young woman waiting for a very important job interview. A driver who is just cut off. A problem arises when nonverbals contradict spoken words rather than reinforce their meaning.
I am very happy.
I am not angry.
We tend to believe what we see rather than what we hear when a contradiction develops. When the facial expression or body language is different from the words, people will believe the body language. In the field of healthcare, the ability to read nonverbal language correctly is one of the most useful skills we can develop. Look for body language and try to identify the feelings that accompany it. Often the sender is not aware of the feelings he or she is expressing. Clenched teeth or the tilt of a head might be the clue that says the person is smiling through invisible tears. The ability to sense a patient's needs and preferences by nonverbal signals, to verify those needs by asking for clarification, and then to meet those needs is the mark of a caregiver who communicates on a superior level. And these skills will serve you well in all interactions, in whatever the relationship. In the case of a mixed message, you must look further. When body language does not match what is being said, look for the reason, then gently point out the mixed message.
How are you feeling today?
Oh, I'm just fine. You know, we're going shopping today.
The aide realizes immediately that Betty's nonverbals are not in sync with her words. Her arthritis has flared again, and as usual, she is trying to hide it because she wants to go out today. By reading her body language, the aide can offer help and support.
Oh, I know you want to go shopping, but I think you should stay home and rest. I'll get the compresses together that the doctor ordered, and I'll try to change my schedule so that we can go out later this week.
This response, based on the aide's keen observation of Betty's body language, allows Betty to get the assistance she needs without having to ask for help. Thanks to a great job of communicating, next time it will be easier for Betty to discuss her problem. Check your own body language for consistency, both at home and in the workplace. Do you change a soiled bed with calm reserve, offering reassurance and diversional conversation to your embarrassed and uncomfortable patient? Or do you approach the task with an obvious look of annoyance, perhaps making a face behind your patient's back, childishly showing distaste? We need to remind ourselves often that actions really do speak louder than words. As you travel, you can count on running into roadblocks, things that obstruct your passage to your destination. There are roadblocks on the road to therapeutic communication, too. They are common behaviors used by people who can't or won't express themselves openly and constructively. These communication barriers are used in over 90% of conversations where one or both parties has a problem to be dealt with or a need to be fulfilled. Often they are used unconsciously. There are times when roadblocks cause few negative effects. Generally, however, they destroy effective communication. Roadblocks diminish self-esteem, trigger anger, defensiveness, resentment, and resistance, and can lead to dependency, withdrawal, and feelings of defeat or of inadequacy. They usually cause permanent damage to a relationship. They can be corrected by using communication skills described earlier on the road signs. Dealing in allness and name-calling puts others down or stereotypes them into categories.
That's just like a woman.
Men are all alike.
Labels replace a real person with a type and can be the basis of prejudice.
All fat people are happy.
All old people are senile.
This labeling begins to stereotype people. We may think we know it all, but there is always room for more data and debate. To remove this roadblock, we must keep an open mind to deal with people and problems on an individual basis. An open mind is the door to personal growth and maturity. Welcome others' opinions as opportunities to re-examine your own point of view in the light of new information. Don't be too stubborn to change your mind or admit you were wrong. The use of you language to make judgmental statements critical of another person or their actions.
You eat too many sweets and then you don't eat your dinner.
In this roadblock, the sender becomes a superiority figure. We have a natural tendency to approve or disapprove of any statement, idea, or attitude. Often we analyze or diagnose others' behavior playing amateur psychologist. An accusing tone points the finger of judgment and puts the other person on the defensive. This verbal slap tends to make things worse. The way to avoid this roadblock is to use I messages. Instead of judging another person's behavior, the I message explains its effect on the other person.
When you eat those sweets, I feel like it's a waste of my time to prepare food that you'll leave on your plate. I worry about your health.
Through the use of I messages, you convey the impact of words and actions on you, without throwing anything back to the sender. keep the door open for more effective communication. It is important to understand that thinking and feeling are different. I messages can be used to express facts.
I will give you a bath. I would like to give you the bath now. I think this is a good time for the bath. I feel sorry that you don't want the bath.
When you use I messages effectively, your meaning will be clearer and free of any judgment or disapproval. Another roadblock, posing solutions to problems.
You ought to get a dishwasher. You should be ashamed to wear that old rag.
You would feel a lot better if you would take your medication the way you are supposed to.
Giving a person a solution to their problems is rarely constructive. It implies that the other person lacks the intelligence or good judgment to understand, or the stability to cope with his or her own difficulties. Advice may be totally inappropriate because many details are not known. The advisor may become preachy and moralizing. Walk around this roadblock in the other person's shoes. Try to look at things from the other viewpoint. Perhaps there isn't money to buy a new dishwasher. That old rag might be a shawl knitted by a favorite aunt, and maybe the patient forgot the right way to take the medication. When you give advice or opinions, you are making decisions and judgments that detract from the other person's sense of self-worth and independence. Sometimes you can remove this roadblock if you know beforehand that the advice you offer is correct and that the receiver is ready to accept the advice. Avoid giving advice unless you know that it is sound and needed by the patient.
I think it would be helpful if you called the nurse to help you with your medication schedule.
Diverting communication, refusing to deal with a problem or topic, avoiding discussion by changing the subject.
I haven't seen you in church lately.
Did I tell you that I got an A on the report?
The avoider may be unwilling to hear about the problem. They might consider the topic boring or distasteful, and rather than listening politely, they interrupt to introduce their own topic. Sometimes they just have poor listening skills. With your patients, the avoider may be uncomfortable with feelings aroused by the conversation.
Have you had any diarrhea today?
Have you seen my granddaughter's picture?
To remove this roadblock, be sure that you have the attention of the other person. Verify that they have heard. Ask questions as needed to learn how, what, when, or where. Try to keep them on track and find out why they are uncomfortable with the subject.
Well, yes, I have. She's a very beautiful baby. But now I have to get some information for the nurse. Have you had diarrhea today?
A positive communication style results in a healthier, more positive mental outlook. If you run into roadblocks, do the necessary road work, so to speak, and then remove the roadblocks, making the highway to effective communication ever more clear. Roadblocks are bad habits that can be corrected. It is difficult and discouraging work at first because it takes time and effort to change a habit. Just being aware of them helps greatly. Use the communication skills and knowledge of detours to eliminate the roadblocks. Time for a review. What is body language? Why is it important that we attempt to understand the body language of others? Can you name 2 roadblocks to effective communication? How would you remove or detour around these roadblocks? The final important element we need to construct our highway is the lane markers. And in therapeutic communication, that is empathy. Empathy is the white line that marks a boundary, setting the limits of our attitudes and behaviors. To stay in our lane is to demonstrate genuine caring. If we stray outside the line of empathy, we risk shallow, non-caring relationships. Exactly what is empathy? We have all heard the little comparison to sympathy. Sympathy is I feel as you do. Empathy is I understand how you feel. If the patient's husband has just died, you really don't feel sympathy because he was not your husband, but you can understand her situation, the worry, and grief. Empathy is responding with understanding. But there is more to empathy than just understanding. We must carry empathy beyond lip service and into action. Once you understand your patient's needs, try to meet those needs through the delivery of care, designed for that particular patient. That is not as easy as it sounds, but there are a few principles. Listen carefully to the total communication, words and nonverbal. First, accept the patient as an individual. Try to identify and anticipate the patient's needs by listening carefully to words and reading the nonverbals. Try to understand how you would feel if you were in the patient's shoes. Communicate understanding through your actions, which are designed to meet the patient's needs. Remember the importance of touch. Nonverbal messages are an excellent means of communicating empathy. Touch conveys caring and warmth. It can be a supportive measure. There are many natural and appropriate opportunities for touch during care delivery. A handshake, a massage, nail care, assisting the patient to put on makeup. Touch, especially in the form of a hug, can be important for the elderly patient who lives alone or for the ill child. Sandra was a nursing student, working a weekend shift. As usual, there were not enough nurses and too many patients, so Sandra found herself with a very heavy assignment. One of her patients was Mrs. Shaner. She had suffered a massive stroke and was semi-responsive. There was no hint of the energetic, fun-loving kindergarten teacher her family described on frequent visits. Now, Sandra had to provide a complete bed bath, oral hygiene, range of motion exercises, incontinent care, repositioning, and linen changes. She tried to be empathetic as she worked, giving Mrs. Shaner the care she needed. But it wasn't easy. Mrs. Shaner was dead weight and difficult to turn. Of course, there was no response to Sandra's comments, but she knew the importance of talking to patients like Mrs. Shaner, whose paralyzed body allowed little more than occasional involuntary movement. It seemed to take forever to complete Mrs. Shaner's care, and Sandra found herself getting further behind in her other assignments. As she hurried, she began to question if this empathy business was really worth the effort. This lady doesn't have the foggiest idea of what I'm doing. I could have done her last. But she needed the most care, and Sandra knew that. Like all her patients, she deserved the best care, delivered with empathy. As Sandra positioned the flaccid arms on a pillow, Mrs. Shaner's hand reached for Sandra's and squeezed it tight. From within that unresponsive body, a thank you for care delivered with empathy. Sandra took a breath. At that moment, she experienced the true nature of empathy. When you respond with understanding, you show that you really care. As we travel toward harmony and understanding, we gain experience that will enable us to become ever more effective communicators. By observing the road signs and overcoming roadblocks and noting the landmarks, we can become therapeutic communicators, able to communicate with our patients in a helping, healing manner.